The only thing I have left is my body. Please feed my daughter. Tonight, my body is yours, human.
The sky over Idris, 9 was always the same, gray and moving. Thick clouds rolled above the cracked glass panels that once filtered sunlight into the city's upper levels. Now, they only reflected flashes of lightning and the endless ash that fell like dust from the failed reactors in the south. Idris wasn't burning anymore. It had already burned out. Calder Vane didn't look up. He didn't need to. The storm never stopped, and the silence beneath it had become part of his rhythm. He stood in front of his makeshift food stall, a converted freight container wedged between 2 collapsed office blocks. A tarpaulin stretched overhead, bolted to crumbling masonry. Its corners fluttered in the wind, snapping against rusted metal. Beneath it, a small stove glowed orange, heating a pot of ration stew, mostly protein gel, thinned with water and thickened with powdered grains. He stirred it without thought. His body moved like it always did, economical, automatic. Calder was in his late 30s, pale from too much indoor light, with a lean build hardened by years of labor and ration scarcity. His short brown hair was flattened from the humidity, and his face, worn, unshaven, carried the look of a man who had once cared a lot and then stopped. He wore fingerless gloves and a layered thermal vest patched with old courier tags. Beneath his stall's counter sat a scanner, a ration printer, a small crate of canned stock, and an old ceramic bowl he used to trade. He hadn't come to Idris, 9 by choice. 5 years ago, he had been a supply chain manager on the Orbital Colony Network. When that system collapsed, when the outer colonies were deemed too costly to support, he was grounded here with the last shipment. The orbital drops ceased, the corporations vanished, and Calder stayed. He didn't owe anyone anything anymore, but someone still had to distribute the leftover food. That became his job. Quiet, limited, manageable. But that routine cracked the moment he saw movement at the edge of the square. At first, he didn't react. Shapes often moved past his stall, hungry, desperate, sometimes armed. Some begged, some offered favors, some stole. But this figure staggered, not from intention, but exhaustion. Thin, unsteady, carrying something. Calder narrowed his eyes and straightened up. Out of the smoke walked a woman and a child. They weren't locals. Their clothes were different. What was left of them? The woman had green skin, smooth but bruised in places. She was tall but hunched from fatigue, her long white silver hair soaked and sticking to her arms. Her clothing had once been layered, decorative, but now was reduced to a single strip of fabric, tied at the waist and shoulder, soaked through and clinging tightly. One side had torn completely down her hip, bearing most of her thigh. She walked barefoot. Every step looked like pain. Beside her, a small girl held onto her leg, wrapped in a stained thermal blanket. Her hair was white like her mother's, but curled into tangled locks. Her bare feet left faint wet prints on the ferrocrete. They reached the stall and stopped. The woman looked up at him. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "The only thing I have left is my body. Please feed my daughter. Tonight, my body is yours, human." Calder didn't answer. His expression didn't change, but something inside him did. She wasn't the first to say something like that. Others had, but it always came with calculation. Part seduction, part survival. This wasn't that. This woman wasn't bargaining. She was collapsing. Calder looked at the girl. Her lips were bluish. Her eyes were dull, tired, confused. He didn't speak. He turned around, ladled stew into 2 bowls, and stepped out from behind the stall. He crouched and set the small bowl in front of the child first. "She eats," he said quietly, glancing at the woman. "Then you come inside." The woman blinked. She didn't move. She looked at the bowl, then at him. "I don't have anything else," she said. "I told you. I heard you," Calder interrupted. "Get her warm. You can talk later." The child took the bowl. Small hands, thin wrists. She didn't eat right away. She just stared up at him. A strange kind of silence. No fear, just quiet watching. Then she began to eat. Calder turned, opened the side gate of his stall, and pointed up the narrow stairs to the storage unit above. Inside, he said, "Before the wind picks up." The woman stood slowly. Her legs buckled. She almost fell. He didn't move to help. She gathered her child into her arms and followed. Inside, the air was warmer. A space heater buzzed low near a metal cot with a thin mattress. There were no decorations, no softness, just function. Storage shelves, a water basin, a coat rack, a hanging towel. A single light bulb buzzed from the ceiling. A cracked panel in the corner was patched with insulation foam. Calder set the larger bowl on a crate beside the heater. "Sit, warm her up." The woman placed her daughter gently on the cot. She unwrapped the wet blanket and stripped it back. The child whimpered, but didn't resist. Calder handed her the dry towel, then stepped away. She dried the girl's hair first, slow and careful, then the small limbs. The child's breathing steadied. She murmured something, just one word, but it caught in the air. "Warm." Calder's throat tightened. He didn't show it. He turned away, knelt at his crate, and pulled out an old shirt. Oversized, faded but dry. "She can wear this. Wrap it tight." The woman looked up. Her voice cracked. "I don't understand. You're not asking anything." "No," he said, "but I offered." "You did," he cut in, "but that was before she ate. Now it's different." She said nothing. He handed her the shirt and moved back to the far wall. He sat down, arms crossed, back against the panel. He closed his eyes. The woman wrapped the girl in the shirt, then draped the heat blanket over her. The child pressed against her, small fingers curling into her mother's skin. Finally asleep, the woman looked at Calder. Her voice was quieter this time. "My name is Nisari." He opened his eyes. "Calder." She hesitated. Then, "We came from Grid Line 7. They closed the access tunnels. Said non-citizens had to resettle, but no one would say where. I tried the shelters. They're full." He nodded once. "They always are." She took a breath. "I used to work textiles, artisan work, before the collapse." He didn't respond. He didn't need to. Nisari looked down at her daughter. She hasn't spoken in 2 days. Just one word, over and over. He waited. She looked up again. Her voice was quieter. "Safe." He nodded. Then she pulled the blanket tighter around herself, covering her exposed leg. Not ashamed, just tired. They didn't speak again, but something had changed. Not much. Just enough. Outside, lightning lit the city. Inside, 2 strangers and a child shared silence and heat. Not family, not yet, but not alone either. Morning on Idris, 9 wasn't a sunrise. It was a shift in the shadows. The storm hadn't stopped, but the lightning moved to the south and the wind softened. Calder stirred first. He sat upright against the wall, back sore, one arm numb from falling asleep crossed over his chest. The heater buzzed low near the cot. The air was warmer than it should have been. That meant the storm cell batteries had held through the night. A small win. He looked over to the cot. Nisari hadn't moved much. She sat curled on the edge, upright, her daughter pressed against her side beneath the blanket. The child, Levi, still wore Calder's shirt, sleeves hanging over her small hands. She was fast asleep, mouth slightly open, cheek nestled into her mother's hip. Nisari's eyes were open. She hadn't slept. Her expression wasn't afraid. It was alert, measuring. She met Calder's eyes briefly, then looked down again. "I thought you might take me once I fell asleep," she said, voice dry. Not accusatory, just honest. "I didn't," Calder replied. "I know. That's why I didn't." He stood, stretched his back, then turned to the small sink. He poured half a cup of reheated water from the solar kettle and handed it to her. "Drink. You're dehydrated." She took it slowly, trying not to wake the girl. Her fingers trembled. She drank half, then stopped. "Give her the rest," she said. "She'll need it when she wakes." Calder didn't argue. He poured a second cup and set it beside the heater. There was a quiet hum between them now. Not awkwardness, but something unspoken. Calder walked to the crates in the corner, knelt, and opened a rusted storage bin. He rummaged, pulled out a sealed ration bar and 2 small nutrient packs. He set them on the crate between them. "Breakfast. Not much, but it'll hold." Nisari glanced at it, but didn't move. "I'll wait," she said. "For what?" "For her to wake. She's not used to food in the morning. Not unless I can trade." Calder frowned slightly. "That's over." She looked up. "Is it?" He didn't answer. For a moment, Nisari studied his face. Not with seduction, with suspicion. Men didn't offer this much for nothing anymore. Not on Idris. Not in the ruins. Why are you here? She asked finally. You're not like the others. You still have supplies. You ration clean water. You cook like you give a damn. Calder leaned against the wall, his arms folded. He looked past her, toward the scratched window. I used to be a scheduler. Supply networks. Planet-side distribution. That's before. He nodded. Before the collapse. Before the outer zones were deemed unsustainable. When they cut off the grid, I stayed. I had access to a shipment drop, unclaimed freight. Nisari's voice was quiet. So you build a kitchen on the bones of a dead city. No one else was counting inventory, he said. I needed something to count. She allowed a short breath. Not quite a laugh, but close. You're not what I expected, she said. Calder glanced down at her daughter. She got a name? Levi, Nisari said. She's 6. She doesn't speak much anymore. Not since her father sold off our housing code and left us flagged. Every time I tried to register her for food access, they scanned my ID and denied it. I stopped trying. You're from one of the hybrid lines, Calder said. Zyrene Allen. Allen base. Zyrene maternal side. We were artisans. Cloth, dyes, sculpture. Nobody needs sculpture anymore. He nodded. She looked at him again. And you? You always alone. Now I am. She didn't push. Instead, she slowly lowered herself back to the cot. Her muscles trembled from hunger. She reached to adjust Levi's blanket, folding it over the girl's feet. I thought I'd feel safer this morning, Nisari said quietly, but I still feel like I have to be ready to run, or to offer something. Like if I stop, I'll disappear. You won't, Calder said, without inflection. That easy, huh? She asked. No, but it starts with someone not taking. Nisari didn't respond. She rested her hand over her daughter's back. Her eyes didn't leave Calder's face. He finally turned back to the crates. I've got enough rations for 3 days if I stretch, but I'll need more credit input from the grid to keep this heater going. Nisari's face shifted. We'll leave. I didn't say that, Calder replied calmly. I said I'll need to be creative. What do you want from me? Nothing. Then why? Because she said the word safe. That's the first time anyone said that in this room in 3 years. Nisari's breath hitched. She didn't cry. She blinked once, then again. No one had said that to her in a long time. She sat down beside her daughter without a word. Calder kept cooking. Minutes passed like that. Quiet movement, subtle glances. Levi finished her food and whispered something in her mother's side. Nisari smoothed back the girl's hair, then looked up at Calder. Where did you sleep last night? On the floor by the door. You don't have a second cot? No room. Then why didn't you take the bed? You could have, she paused, searching for the right word. Shared it. Calder didn't turn. Because I didn't want to. She stared at his back, puzzled. You mean you didn't want me? No, he replied quietly. I mean, I didn't want it like that. He turned and met her gaze. Look, I've seen what this place does to people. You come in starving, soaked, desperate. You offer your body because you think it's the only way. I've seen it too many times. You're not the first. You won't be the last. But if I take what you offer in that state, I'm just part of the system that broke you. Nisari didn't speak for a long time. Her fingers curled against her knees. Her daughter pressed close, sensing something had changed. What if I offer it again? She asked softly. When I'm not starving? Then we'll talk, Calder said. There was no heat in his voice. No tension, just truth. For the first time since arriving, Nisari didn't look guarded. She looked exhausted but grounded, as if her feet had finally touched real floor, not sinking sand. Then Levi spoke. Why did you help us? Her voice was small but clear. Calder turned to her. The question was so direct, it made him pause. He crouched slowly. Because I was tired of eating alone, he said. The girl nodded like that made perfect sense. Nisari exhaled a breath she'd been holding for hours, maybe days. After they ate, she insisted on helping clean the crates. Calder didn't stop her. She worked in silence, precise and focused. Once, her hand brushed his wrist as she handed over a knife to scrub. She didn't flinch. Neither did he, but they both felt it. Later that afternoon, he showed her how to open the ration printer and reformat the input lines. She listened carefully. Levi watched from the cot, small fingers stroking the edge of the thermal sheet. As evening fell, Calder stepped outside for a final air scan. Wind picked up again, but the worst of the storm was still a day off. He stood at the edge of the canopy, hands in his vest pockets, breathing the ash-heavy air. Behind him, Nisari stood in the doorway, barefoot but clean now. The light from inside cast a glow on her skin. "When does this place stop feeling like a ruin?" she asked. Calder didn't turn. "When someone says it's not," he said, "and means it." She stepped forward, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. "Then maybe this is a start." He glanced at her, and for the first time, she wasn't shielding anything behind her eyes. It wasn't safety yet, but it was shelter, and for now, that was enough. That night, the silence inside Calder's unit wasn't heavy. It was soft, settled, the kind of quiet that came when no one had to explain themselves. Calder sat on the floor near the heater, hunched over a ration crate. He was repairing a heat coil with an old diagnostic tool. Wires sparked gently under his gloves. Across the room, Levi lay curled in a nest of blankets and old clothing, breathing slow and even. She'd fallen asleep after whispering warm again and eating her second full meal in 2 days. Nisari sat on the cot nearby, her knees pulled up, arms loosely around them. She wore Calder's extra shirt now, dry, long-sleeved, cinched at her waist with twine. Her green skin caught the orange glow of the heater in long shadows across her collarbones and arms. Her white-silver hair had been cleaned but still clung damp near the ends. She hadn't asked for a brush. She hadn't asked for anything. "Do you ever turn the lights off?" she asked quietly. Calder didn't look up. "Not often. Circuit's old. Once it goes out, it takes hours to cycle back." She nodded. "I haven't slept in the dark since the shelters." He glanced at her now. "There was a man," she continued, matter of fact. "He'd wait for it, the light to fail. That's when he'd start trading extras for silence." Calder's hands paused. "I'm not telling you this for pity," she added. "I just don't want you thinking I'm afraid of silence. I'm not. I'm afraid of dark." He nodded, then adjusted the dial on the coil. "I leave it on," he said. "For both of us." She studied his face. "You lost someone." He didn't answer immediately. The coil hummed softly. A faint blue arc pulsed to the edge. "My brother," he said finally. "Cargo technician. He refused to evacuate after the collapses. Said if he stayed, the systems might hold a little longer." "Did they?" Calder shook his head once. "No." He set the tool down, rubbed his jaw. "I used to think staying behind meant I could make up for it. Keep things working. Keep someone fed. That maybe the math would come out even eventually." Nisari lowered her knees, letting her legs stretch out beneath the oversized shirt. "And now?" He shrugged. "Now I just don't want to disappear." She looked at him, long and quiet. "I think you're still here," she said. He met her eyes. Something shifted. Nisari stood slowly and stepped toward the heater. She crouched beside him, careful not to wake her daughter. She reached behind her neck, pulled free the twine holding her damp hair, and let it fall. The ends were tangled and wet. Her fingers hesitated. "Can I use your towel?" she asked. He handed it over, but as she reached for it, their hands brushed. Not a hard contact, just skin on skin, brief and unforced. She paused. So did he. Her voice dropped slightly. "Can I ask you something?" He nodded. "If I leaned on you now, would it be payment?" Calder didn't answer right away. Then he gently shifted, turned toward her, and opened the space between them. Small, an inch at most. "No," he said. "It'd be trust." She looked at him for a long time. Then, slowly, she sat down beside him. Not touching, not yet, but close enough that their shoulders almost grazed. She began drying her hair, and as she did, her breathing evened out. Her body no longer curled into itself. She let herself lean, not on him, but toward him. They sat like that for minutes. Maybe more. Then Levi stirred in her sleep. Her voice came out groggy. "Mom." Nisari turned immediately. "I'm here." "Is it morning?" "Not yet." There was a pause. "Is he still there?" Nisari smiled faintly. "He is." Levi murmured something soft, something that might have been good, then fell back into sleep. Calder didn't move. Nisari didn't either. But something had passed between them. Not owed, not offered, not taken. Chosen. As the heater buzzed and the city outside moaned in its sleep, Calder felt her shoulder finally settle against his. Light contact, barely pressure, but it stayed. He didn't pull away. Neither did she. There was no kiss, no hunger, just two people sitting close in a room that was finally warm enough for someone to let go. And outside, for once, it didn't rain. The heater clicked softly as it cycled to low. Morning on Idris. 9 meant stale air and the hum of dead infrastructure. But inside Calder's unit, the silence no longer felt abandoned. It felt full. Calder stood at the small steel counter, chopping a rehydrated root slab into quarters with a rusted utility knife. His movements were steady, precise. Nisari stood beside him, not watching, not waiting, but working. She scrubbed out the used stew pot at the basin, her sleeves rolled to the elbow, hair loosely tied with a strip of old thermal fabric. Her skin still bore the green lavender hues of her hybrid bloodline. But this morning, she looked less like someone surviving and more like someone returning. On the cot behind them, Levi sat upright, knees drawn up, eating from a half bowl of ration-thickened porridge. The oversized shirt she wore had been knotted again, this time by Calder. It fit better now, and she looked not happy but settled. Her curls had dried into soft coils around her cheeks. Her eyes followed her mother, not with fear but focus. Calder handed Nisari the slices. She took them without a word, dropped them into the pot, then paused. "You trust me with the food now?" she asked. "I trust your hands not to waste it," Calder said. A flicker of amusement touched her face, dry, subtle, but real. "That's the closest thing to a compliment I've had in months. You're still not getting the stove." "I didn't ask for it." They shared a look. Familiar now. Comfortable. Calder turned to wipe the blade. As he did, Nisari caught sight of his left hand. Split across the knuckle, a fresh cut, still raw. "When did that happen?" "Yesterday. One of the old freight crates." "Didn't notice." "You noticed. You just ignored it." He didn't argue. She stepped closer, reached into the supply bin, and pulled out the med patch box. It was nearly empty. She peeled back one strip and gently took his hand. Calder tensed, only slightly. Not from pain. From the sudden contact. She held his wrist steady, cleaned the wound with a bit of warm water, then applied the seal strip. Her fingers were careful, skilled. He wondered what she used to make with hands like these. "You're bad at taking care of yourself," she said. "I take care of the stall." "That's not the same." She let go of his hand slowly. He didn't pull away. Levi watched them both now. Quiet, still. Then she spoke, her voice clear, soft. "Are you friends now?" Calder and Nisari both looked at her. The child blinked at them innocently. Nisari knelt beside her. "I don't know yet," she said, "but I think we're trying." Levi tilted her head. "Can I stay if you're friends?" Calder answered this time. "You don't have to go." Nisari looked up at him. "Not even if things get harder?" "I'll adjust." She stared at him, eyes sharp, testing. "Why?" she asked. "You know why." He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. After they ate, Calder helped Levi fold the blankets. Nisari used a scrap of old fabric to clean out the heater vents. As she crouched, the hem of her wrap rode high along her thigh, but she didn't tug it down. She wasn't performing. She was just moving freely for once. Later, she stood near the door, arms crossed. "I have a request," she said. Calder looked up from his repair work. "Not payment, not barter," she clarified. "Just a request." He nodded once. "I haven't seen my reflection in months. Do you have anything I can use as a mirror?" He walked to the crate near the sink and pulled out a dented metal panel. Polished, bent, but still reflective. She took it with both hands, stepped toward the window light, lifted it slowly, and stared. Her breath caught. Her fingers rose to her cheek. She traced the line of her jaw, her temple, the corner of her mouth. Calder didn't speak. He just watched. "I look older," she whispered. "You look like someone who made it." Nisari lowered the mirror. Her eyes were glassy now, but she didn't cry. She walked back to him. "I don't want to be someone who survives by disappearing." "You're not," he said. She stood there for a moment, unsure of what came next. Then, in a slow, deliberate motion, she reached out and placed her hand on his chest, just above the heart. Not invitation, not transaction, just contact. His hand covered hers, and neither of them let go. Behind them, Levi watched. She said nothing, but she smiled. The power grid pulsed once as the storm outside rolled across the upper districts. It was late, later than either of them usually stayed awake. But neither of them moved to lie down. Not yet. Levi had fallen asleep curled in the cot with a heater blanket over her chest, her hand clutching the edge of Calder's shirt like a tether. Her face was calm now, her breathing soft. The child had eaten well, smiled twice, and fallen asleep without fear. It was the first night Calder didn't hear her murmur in her sleep. Nisari stood near the window, arms folded beneath the soft drape she now wore like a robe. The fabric no longer clung like desperation. She'd repaired it, stitched it, cleaned it, tied it back into something that fit her. Her hair was brushed back and damp from washing. She didn't ask for privacy anymore. She simply took it when she needed, without shame. Calder sat on the ground, back against the heater casing, one knee raised. He'd removed his outer vest. The thermal layer beneath was thin, old, torn at the shoulder seam. His chest rose and fell slowly, tired but not worn out. Nisari turned to him. Her voice came quieter than usual. "Are you still afraid of closeness, Calder?" He didn't answer right away, just looked at her. She stepped toward him, barefoot on the cold metal floor. She knelt beside him, close but not touching. "I'm not offering anything," she said. "Not trading, not asking. I just want to be next to someone. As myself." He met her eyes. Then, "Come here." She didn't hesitate. She slid into the space beside him, slow and quiet. Her thigh touched his, then her shoulder. Her head rested gently against his collarbone. No tension, just warmth. Her hand moved to his wrist, not to pull him closer, but to feel him there. They sat like that. Seconds passed, then minutes. Then Calder's hand moved, slowly, to her lower back. He didn't grip her, just held her. Nisari exhaled, long and quiet, against his chest. "I used to think if someone touched me, without payment, I wouldn't know how to breathe." "You're doing fine," he murmured. She shifted slightly, pressing closer. His pulse quickened. She noticed. "You're still afraid?" she whispered. "No," he said, just remembering how not to be alone. She reached up, gently ran her fingers along his jaw, then paused. A faint scar traced down the left side of his neck, just beneath the ear, pale and old. He stiffened at her touch, just for a second. She whispered, "That wasn't a crate injury." "No," he said. "That was from a man who didn't want to share a food voucher. 2 years ago. He got mine, but I walked out." She leaned in, gently kissed the edge of that scar. Not for pity, not for comfort, for acknowledgement. Then she rested her head there. Minutes passed. Neither of them spoke. Then Nisari's hand moved, sliding beneath his arm, wrapping around his ribs, pulling him closer until they were flush. Their legs touched, their stomachs aligned. It wasn't sexual. It was human. She whispered, "Can I stay like this?" Calder didn't speak. He just pulled the blanket down from the cot, draped it over her bare legs, and wrapped his arm around her waist. Her breath hitched once, then settled. They didn't lie down. They didn't undress. They just held each other, skin to skin beneath layers of failure and ash and things the world had stripped away. Outside, the storm cracked again, lighting the window for a brief flash. Inside, she closed her eyes, and for the first time since arriving, Nisari fell asleep in someone's arms, warm, unbought, and entirely chosen. The first thing Nisari felt was breath, warm, steady, rising and falling beneath her cheek. She opened her eyes slowly. Calder was still there, asleep against the wall, one arm wrapped securely around her back. His chest rose beneath her hand. His grip hadn't loosened. The room was quiet except for the low hum of the heater. She didn't move for a long time. She just watched him. His face was calm. Worn, yes, his jaw lined with stubble, a faint crease between his brow, but relaxed in a way she hadn't seen before, in a way she hadn't trusted in anyone before. She touched his shirt, the soft fabric damp with shared warmth. Then her own fingers, bare, real, rested over his chest. She could feel his heartbeat. Slow, alive, solid. It wasn't a dream. He shifted slightly, eyes blinking open. For a second, he looked confused. Then his gaze found hers, and he exhaled slowly, relieved. She smiled softly. "Still here," she said. He answered with just 2 words, "Good morning." It was the first time she'd heard him say that. Ever. Behind them, the cot creaked. Miss Sari turned. Levi sat up, rubbing her eyes with one tiny fist, hair fluffed from sleep. She blinked twice, stared at her mother nestled in Calder's arms. No question, no fear, just quiet watching. Nisari didn't pull away. Levi climbed off the cot and walked over on bare feet. She reached out and touched her mother's arm, then looked at Calder. Her voice came out sleepy and small. "Can we eat?" Calder smiled. Only a little, but it showed. He nodded, eased his arm from around Nisari, and stood. "I'll heat the pot." He stepped into the prep corner. Nisari sat up, brushing her daughter's curls back gently. "Did you sleep well?" she asked. Levi nodded, then looked back at the blanket where Nisari had been curled up with Calder. "You were warm," she said quietly. Nisari held her for a moment. By the time the stew was warming, Calder had already unpacked 2 bowls. Levi sat cross-legged beside him now, watching the pot bubble. Nisari stood behind them, looking at both of them, at the space they now shared. She stepped to the rack, reached for her wrap, and paused. She didn't put it on. Instead, she walked to Calder, still in his shirt, and knelt beside him. "I used to think I had nothing left," she said quietly. "But I was wrong." He turned slightly. "You have your daughter," he said. "I do," she nodded. "But I also have myself again. I want to give that to someone now. Not for food. Not for safety." She looked up at him, serious, certain. "For you. If you want it." Calder didn't answer with words. He leaned in and kissed her, gentle, brief, certain. Levi didn't look away. She didn't flinch. She just smiled. After breakfast, they worked together. Nisari mended one of the damaged thermal sleeves Calder had tossed aside. Levi helped fold towels. Calder rewired the unit's overhead light with a salvage panel Nisari had noticed hidden beneath a collapsed canopy the day before. When they ate again that evening, they ate as 3. Not a guest, not a caretaker independence, but a household. Later, Nisari lay back on the cot with Levi curled against her chest, her fingers tangled in the child's hair. Calder sat nearby, wiping dust from an old circuit tablet, legs stretched out. His eyes kept drifting toward them. Nisari noticed. "I'm not leaving," she said simply. He looked at her. "I didn't ask. You don't have to." She reached out, took his hand, and pulled it over her daughter's side. Their hands rested there together. "This is home now," she said. The lights flickered once, then steadied. Outside, the wind moved across the canopy like breath through broken lungs. But inside, it was quiet, safe, alive. Weeks passed. The storms over Idris. 9 hadn't eased, but the cold no longer felt invasive. Not inside their unit. Calder had patched the insulation, added a second thermal strip to the door, and installed a small solar panel in the alley's upper scaffolding. It didn't generate much power, but it was enough to keep the heater running through the night. Levi had grown stronger. Her cheeks filled out. She smiled more now, sometimes even laughed, soft and short, like she wasn't used to the sound yet. She helped her mother with folding, sometimes with stirring the ration pot, and occasionally followed Calder around, asking whispered questions about tools she didn't know the names of. Calder had added a second cot to the room, but Nisari never used it. Most nights, she slept beside him, her head on his shoulder, one leg tangled with his. Some nights, she didn't sleep at all, just lay awake and ran her fingers over his chest as if memorizing the shape of peace. They had built something real here. Not grand, not heroic, just warm. It was late one night when Nisari sat beside Calder after Levi had gone to sleep. Rain pattered gently outside the canopy glass. Inside, the lights were low, the heat steady, the silence intimate. Nisari had changed again. She no longer wore the wrap out of necessity. She wore it because she liked how it moved on her skin. Tonight, she let it fall low on one shoulder, exposing the gentle slope of her neck and the soft green of her collarbone. She knelt in front of him, barefoot, deliberate. "I've healed," she said. "I feel in how I stand, in how I breathe, in how I look at you." Calder didn't speak. She reached out, undid the top seam of his shirt, and pulled it down gently. Her hands traced his skin, not hurried, not shy. She touched him like someone who knew him now, who chose him. I want to be close to you, she whispered. Not for warmth, not for survival, just to feel what it's like to be wanted fully. Gently, he reached for her face, cupped her cheek. His thumb brushed her jaw, and she leaned into it. I want you, he said, but only if you want this, without fear. I'm not afraid, she replied. Not anymore. She rose, straddled his lap slowly, knees pressing into the floor beside his hips. Her hands slid beneath his shirt, lifting it inch by inch. He let her. She pressed her body to his, bare skin against bare skin, both of them warm from the heater, from each other. He pulled a wrap from her shoulders. She let it fall away. Her body was lit softly by the heater's orange glow, long, elegant, strong in places, delicate in others. She didn't try to pose. She didn't need to. They kissed, slow, deep, and unbroken. Her hands explored him first, chest, stomach, ribs. She moved like someone rediscovering her own want. He kissed her neck, her collarbone, the space behind her ear. She shivered, but not from cold. They lay back onto the cot, shifting quietly, careful not to wake the child sleeping nearby. Their bodies met gradually, clothes discarded in silence, hands mapping each other like language. He moved with care. She moved with intention. There was no rush, no transaction, just breath against breath, skin against skin. The sound of two people finally letting themselves feel everything that had been kept locked behind silence, survival, and shame. She whispered his name once, quietly, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to say it out loud. He whispered hers back. Their rhythm deepened. Their connection never broke. It wasn't perfect. It was human. When they finished, she lay against him, her leg draped over his hip, her fingers drawing lazy lines across his chest. I didn't know this kind of touch could exist, she said. He held her tighter. You were never meant to be starved for it. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in her life, she believed that. Outside, the storm kept moving. Inside, so did they. Together. Rain had stopped for once. The alley still smelled of rust and wet stone, but the wind was soft and the clouds held back for a few rare hours. Calder crouched beside a decommissioned delivery drone embedded in the sidewalk rubble, tapping on a corroded panel with his voltage probe. Beside him, Levy crouched too, barefoot, muddy, alert. What does that part do? She asked, pointing at the cylindrical core. Power distributor, Calder said. If it's intact, we can use it for the heat coil. She held out a small cloth sack. Want me to carry it? You break it, you carry it forever, he said seriously, but the edge of a smile tugged at his mouth. Levy smiled back. From a distance, they didn't look like strangers. They looked like they belonged together. Back in the unit, Nisari stood alone, hair still damp from the basin, hands folded loosely against her stomach. She didn't pace. She didn't worry. She'd stopped counting the minutes since they left. That alone was proof of change. The room smelled of hot rations and dry linen. She had washed everything, out of habit, out of peace. When they came back, she wanted the place to feel like something real, something whole. The hatch creaked open. Levy entered first, cheeks flushed, mud on her shins, holding a cracked drone panel proudly like a trophy. I found working copper, she announced. Calder followed behind, carrying the salvaged casings in both arms. His shirt was damp with effort. His hands were scraped from prying. Nisari turned, hands on hips. She's barefoot. Again. She said boots were slowing her down, Calder said. Levy nodded firmly. She climbed a full scaffold without slipping, he added. Nisari walked over, crouched, and wiped Levy's legs with a clean rag. I'm glad you didn't slip, she said. But next time, boots. Levy nodded, then turned to Calder. Can I show her the socket trick you taught me? Go on, he said. She ran to the work crate in the corner and began unpacking tools. Nisari stood up and looked at him. There was sweat on his brow, dust on his arms, but his eyes were clear, calm in a way she had never seen in any man since her world fell apart. You're building something here, she said softly. He looked at her, then past her toward Levy. So are you. She stepped closer. I mean it, Calder. Before you, I was surviving minute by minute. I didn't know what it meant to belong somewhere. Or to someone. He touched her waist, thumb brushing the cloth at her hip. "You do now." She nodded. Then, without breaking eye contact, she reached behind her and took his hand in hers. She led him slowly across the room toward the cot, where Levi had already stacked 2 drone cores like building blocks. "Before I found you," Nisari said, "my daughter didn't speak more than 1 word a day." Calder looked down. "And now?" Levi turned around, quiet, eyes wide. She walked over, tugged gently on Calder's hand, and stood in front of him. "Can I say something?" she asked. He knelt instinctively, meeting her eye level. "Of course." Levi's voice didn't tremble. "I want to call you Dad now." His heart hitched. His throat tightened. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Levi stepped forward and hugged him. Not brief, not cautious, full. "I think you already are." Calder wrapped his arms around her. His eyes closed. Nisari stood behind them, one hand covering her mouth, trying not to cry. But she let the tears fall anyway. This wasn't survival anymore. This was life. That night, they didn't sleep in shifts. They slept together. The 3 of them, curled beneath the same blanket, warm from the heater, safe from the storm. Outside, the sky rumbled, but inside, nothing cracked. Nothing wavered. There was no longer a woman trading her body. No longer a man avoiding the world. No longer a girl without a voice. There was just a mother, a father, and a daughter. A family on Idris 9, at last.
但是他看到桶子在那边碎裂。